So, yeah, a bit of background on me. I have spent 20 years building products, digital products. Most recently, I was at Us2, which you might know of for Monument Valley, and we've done Barclays mobile banking and our H&M's app. So I was there for 5 years, and I left. I had this interest in fact, I spent most of my life building something, making the user case and good user experience, and I never got asked or considered any sort of ending. And that itch, I wanted to scratch, and I started scratching that about 3 years ago, thinking that was going to be a project of a few weeks. I'm here 3 years later, I've written a book. I found it fascinating, I want to tell you this story. So, let's look at the consumer experience. We can break that down into broadly 3 experiences. It's an onboarding, a usage, and an offboarding experience. And if you think about that in terms of user engagement, you can map that onto a model. So, as onboarding happens, we have advertising attracts us, marketing orientates us, and we go through these stages to get on board and into a usage experience. And so, after a while, we sort of, as consumers, start to get a little bit bored and looking for the other thing. As providers, we're starting to think, oh, we've got this great new tech, we want to share it with everyone. So we totally overlook this offboarding experience. We have emotionless dead ends. Sometimes we let things linger on forever, especially in our houses. And in certain cases, we're not even allowed to leave a service or product experience. But this goes way, way back into our psychology and our sociology. So you imagine yourself hundreds of years ago on a field, you're cold, you're hungry, you're impoverished, diseases everywhere. In fact, you've got a really good vocabulary about this subject. Everyone around you dies. Friends, family, siblings, aunties, uncles, mums and dads, everyone dies. So you know a lot about death. And your life's so rubbish, you desperately want to get to this place, heaven. In fact, most religions have a similar offering in heaven. It's abundant, it's warm, and people are friendly, you know. So we want to get there, and we go through all these mechanisms in religion, some of which are around a funeral and offboarding of life. But in 1347, the plague arrived in Europe, decimated Europe in 3 years. A third of Europe's population was killed. Death becomes a very meaningless experience. Lots of questions get asked around religion, and loads of more challenger religions start to come up. One of which is the Catholic religion. Now, they're the established religion at the time. A lot of questions being asked around them. Lots more religions start to come up, and one of them is the Protestant religion. And the Protestant religion has some different values and different mechanisms. So one of which is the relationship to fasting. Lots of religions have a relationship to fasting and abstinence, but in the Protestant religion, we removed that. So we've lost this skill. Also, in the Protestant religion, had a different relationship to jobs. So in the Catholic religion, you could work as a pope, a priest, and a nun, as a good job under the eyes of God. But in the Protestant religion, you could work as any job. You think LinkedIn's got something to do with your career path? You should check out the Protestant religion. That's where it really started. And then also in investment, you can invest in the eyes of God in the Protestant religion. So what do people do is start to invest into their businesses. And if you invest into your business makes more money, and you need to pay your employees more money, they have more money, and eventually they need to make a decision. Do I work less time or do I buy more stuff? Thankfully, the Industrial Revolution starts to provide more stuff at scale, so you start buying stuff. And at the same time, medicine and science starts to push back on our experience of death. And as witnesses of death and looking after our dying loved ones, we used to do it very fondly and closely. But then we started to hide that away in hospitals and hospices, so we have this distance experience of death. And this left us on earth to consume a heaven-like abundance without any real relationship to endings. So where we had this very profound relationship and a wide vocabulary about endings and death, we now overlook it, we don't care for it, and it's considered unwanted. So you're thinking, I came to a digital conference, why are we talking about this stuff? And So I need to bring it back into the modern context with printer ink cartridges. So my printer ink runs out every 5 minutes, and I'm sure you have a similar experience. And I go out, get a new printer ink cartridge, I bring it back, I put it in, and then it turns on. And I'm holding an old printer ink cartridge, and I'm thinking, what should I do with that? I can't put it in landfill, it's super toxic. And how do I recycle it? I look on the back of the pack, and there's 2 other marketing messages on there, and there's nothing in the context of me needing to offboard this printer ink cartridge. I go online, I found out actually this company's had a really good system for 20 years. I don't know about it in this context. They send me this envelope, and eventually I can offboard. I've had to do this experience but myself. It was a hidden offboarding experience. This happens in the product industry, the service industry, and the digital industry. And one of the components of that is our relationship to how we're operating in businesses. Now, what we used to assume is like a single engagement model, which is there's a consumer over there, I target them, I'm going to acquire that consumer, and then they're going to be my customer forever. But what we need to do is think about a multiple engagement model, where we target a consumer, we acquire a consumer, they have a great relationship, and we give them a good ending. And they can rebirth into a different experience or back to us. Now let's look at digital. Let's look at content, creating content, photographs, for example. The price of photographs, digital storage has gone plummeting down. And when we used to value a photograph, the photograph is so cheap now, I really don't care about thinking about editing them down or deleting them. In Victor Mein-Schoenberg's book, Delete, which I very much recommend, he talks about the 3 seconds it takes to edit photos down. It's way too expensive to me to use. I just buy more Dropbox space. And even the language we use a lot in the terms and conditions, for example, which is the great sort of turning the onboarding experience, that big onboarding experience of ticking the box. The terms and conditions load the relationship to have a bad ending. We can't have an amicable ending in a lot of the terms and conditions we have. So out of the 20,000 words of iTunes terms and conditions, most of it says 12 mentions of termination until you have committed an act and we're going to break this agreement, and you're the criminal. The language gets like this. It's the funniest little phrase you can imagine. Isn't that dark and sinister? So I put this on a kid's T-shirt, and I get my kids to wear it in the summer down the beach, and people come up to them, and then they look at it, and they go, apples, and they think it says pears, peaches, plums, and it's, apple destroys families. The churn rate in digital, and I've done a lot of digital products in my time, and it's a terrifying experience. So 71% of all apps are dealt with in 90 days. It's outrageous. And we don't offboard these experiences at all. We don't spend any time looking at how this is ended. And yes, I am going to talk about GDPR. So your inbox has been filling up with GDPR experiences recently. That's an ending experience. It's a really good example of how badly we do offboarding globally. So if you think of GDPR creates 3 clear objectives, legal objectives for consumers to leave, empowered to leave your service. Are we designing any ending experiences there? So right to data portability, it offers them up something else. It starts to, the crack of doubt opens up. And you know if you lose consent off them, your service is paused, you're frozen. And now they're going to ask for the right to be forgotten. And when we create so much content in this system, and we're pressured to create all this content and share this content without any valid endings, without any control over this content, to delete it and control it, then is it any wonder we end up with something like revenge porn? 1 in 10 young women in the US gets threatened with this. So we take matters into our own hands. We start using things like VPNs. We want to hide a little bit. 1 in 4 people use VPNs globally now. Well, people that are on the internet, for example. So what is a good closure experience? What's a good ending? Over the time I've been looking into this, I think it's something like this. It needs to be consciously connected to the rest of the experience through emotional triggers, the similar sort of emotional triggers we use at onboarding. They need to be actionable as well, so then we take responsibility for them, and they need to be timely. So let's look at consciously connected. What does that mean? When I was back at Us2, we brought out this app. It's called Rando. It's an anti-social photo sharing app. And you downloaded it, and we didn't want to know who you were, your Twitter account, what gender you were. We just gave you the app. You took a photograph, and you uploaded the photograph, and you got one back. And it was great. We had nearly 1 million downloads, and then 12 million randos were sent. But, you know, with that success comes a lot of attraction. Hackers hacked it. Over a couple of weeks, we had loads of messes, and we decided to can it. And because we didn't take anyone's data, it was super easy to clear up. We just turned it off and told everyone about it. And there was an emotional loss, but people really embraced the fact that we didn't have any of their data. Emotional triggers. So leaving Spotify, they do a great ending. When I leave Spotify, they send me a playlist of "Don't go," "Don't leave me this way." It's a lovely emotional reflection on that previous experience. And it is a great poignant little full stop to the experience. Actionable. So the insurance market is dominated by blanket insurance. So you usually get like a 1-year housing insurance or car insurance, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not very dynamic, it's not clever at all. Trove has come to market with an actionable sort of dynamic thing. So let's say, for example, you've got your camera in your house. It's actually at low risk in an insurance sense in your house. But when you take it outside, it becomes a high risk thing. Trove can now understand that. So you move with your product, your expensive insured product, and you take it away and take it out. And as you come back to the house and the risk drops to low again, they drop the risk again. It's dynamic. It's great. That's how we should be doing it. Timely. Now, when Snapchat came out, I'm sure you all remember, which actually is a crazy amount of time ago now, it seems. It was a little bit of a sinister app used by people who were sending sort of funny little pictures to one another. And they liked it because they knew what was going to happen. These images were going to get deleted. They disappeared. 35% of people use Snapchat because of that, because they can factually understand it's got an end. Makes them feel good. That's the end of this. If you're interested in the book, it's on Amazon. It looks like that. Thank you very much, and thank you to the conference for bringing me here.